Hello, my name is Christopher Ewing and I am a high school math teacher. Today I'm here to share a little bit about student interactions in a distance learning environment. Today I will be talking about three different types of student interactions in the distance learning environment. I'll be focusing on a teacher to student interaction, which we do through teacher modeling, student to student interactions, where students will be interacting with one another in small groups, and students sharing out with the whole class. So another interaction with students interacting with their teachers and their peers as well. So just a little bit of a background. Right now we are teaching a 6-week summer statistics course, and we are just starting to learn about z-scores. So this was the task we used to introduce z-scores, and we'll be focusing mostly on questions 2, 3, and 4 in this. So we started off our class, we have a live Zoom class with our students where we started off with modeling, and then we sent students out to do questions 3 and 4 in small groups. And then we were able to come back as a whole class and discuss whether what answers were right and how we got certain answers. So without further ado, here is an example of some teacher modeling.
20 scores below. And we want to really think about, well, how many standard deviations is that if we know that one standard deviation is 10? And we know that by working with standard deviations in the past, we know that a standard deviation is how far are you on average from the mean. And so we're saying here, one standard deviation says that you're about 10 away from the mean. So if you're about 10 away from the mean, then one standard deviation puts us at a score of 70. And that means Biff over here, so we went minus 10 here, and we went another 10 there, for a total of 2 standard deviations. Can you give me a thumbs up if you got that Biff was 2 standard deviations from the mean? You can either show me thank you, Ion, or give me the little reaction thingy majigger.
So in this clip, you can see a teacher modeling, explaining her reasoning and her thinking for our students. So that way they will be able to use it as well when we ask them to go and do those questions 3 and 4. After we had this teacher modeling section, we were able to put students into small groups and breakout rooms for students to answer those last couple of questions. And then we get to start hearing some of the student-to-student interactions where students are helping each other learn the material. So let's take a look at that.
The standard deviation is 10, so it'd be 7/10 away from the mean of it's 7/10 of a standard deviation away from the mean, or 70% of a standard deviation.
So then, yeah, 1.7, right?
No, it's 0.7.
1.7.
No, it's 0.7.
That's it? Because you're adding 1, right?
0.7.
Oh shit, my bad. I'm stupid. Yeah, 0.7 standard mean deviation. My bad. I thought it was 97 or something. Wait, so how do you divide it, right? So you add it, or hold on.
It's just 7 divided by 10 because it isn't a complete standard deviation away.
Okay, so like for example, if the standard deviation was 20, it would be 7 divided by 20.
And so in this clip, we can hear some students working in a small group trying to make sense of how to find the z-score. You're able to hear one student continue to ask some questions so that way he is able to understand how they are finding it. And he even starts giving his own explanations at the end with a different example where he's talking about dividing by 20. It's showing that he's learning from his peers what he is supposed to be doing in order to find the z-score. After we had the students work in small groups, we were able to come back together as a whole class and go over these questions so that way students could share their solutions and their reasonings, which is seen in this next clip. Doing, right? Let's see, I was wondering, could someone help us maybe with parts 3A and 3B? So how far away was how far away from the mean is Marty's score of 90 and in what direction? And then how many standard deviations is 90 away from the mean? And if you want to unmute, you're more than welcome to do that. If you'd rather just throw it in the chat, that'd be great. Either way.
For 3A, it would be 10 points above from the mean, so to the right.
Nice.
10 points above the mean or to the right. All right, and then yeah, I see Ion saying, well, I'll put Ion's answer there in a second, yeah. And then what'd you guys say for part B, Martha?
For part B, we said 1 standard deviation above from the mean.
And then my other question for you is, did you do it like, wait, are you in Ion's group? Did
Yes,
you do it like,
I am.
okay, so did you guys do it all like that? Or did you think about it as the number line that Miss Banach was showing?
When we were first talking about it, I was telling them that the way that I saw it was basically like how Miss Banach said. It wasn't necessarily like the number line, but it was if 10 is 1 standard deviation, then that would mean that it's equal to 1. And I just subtracted it.
So in this clip, you could hear a student sharing out her answers to the whole class of what she did and how she did it. And this also led to a discussion of different ways we can find these z-scores. So you heard us talking a little bit about Ayan. She had put her answer in using the z-score formula. And so this was a starting point for us to have a discussion about how we can find z-scores different ways. And it also allowed us to see how our students were understanding the mathematics. So in conclusion, there are a couple things that I just want to say. So we can still provide students with the chances to interact in a distance learning environment. Providing students with chances to interact with one another in small groups before having them share out in a whole class is very helpful. I see this kind of being the same as in a brick and mortar setting where we give students some time to work in groups or independently before we call them back to share out whole class. Another thing we found out was having students choose groups that they work well with was extremely helpful. Having people they felt comfortable with talking about their mathematics and struggle with was one way that they started collaborating more in those small breakout rooms. And lastly, planning specific times and areas where you want students to be interacting is extremely helpful. So making sure you know when and where you want those interactions to happen. Thank you so much for your time and the best of luck to you in your distance learning journey.